Decades since Natalie Wood's tragic drowning. But one of the men who was with her the night she died finally came forward. After years of lying, he finally confessed the truth. Natalie Wood's secret traumas haunted her throughout her life, especially the inappropriate relationships she shared with older men in power. But in the end, fate had a horrible twist in store for her, and her death remains a mystery. Although Natalie was destined for Hollywood, her beginnings were anything but glamorous. Born Natalia Nikolaevna Zakharenko, her loving Russian immigrant parents had undeniable dark sides. Having suffered through the Great Depression, her father Nick had a fraught relationship with alcohol, and his addiction turned him from a protector into a violent aggressor. Her mother Maria may have been even worse. With a skewed moral compass, Maria would purposefully spark her husband's temper. Natalie's sister Lana later called their mother a pathological liar. Leading the family with her flair for melodrama and bizarre superstitions, Maria did not provide her children with a stable upbringing. When a fortune teller predicted Natalie's future fame, that she would one day be known throughout the world, her mother became obsessed with getting her into the entertainment industry. Little Natalie didn't have much choice in the matter. Although she possessed a natural talent for acting, she wasn't as keen on the movies as her mother was. During auditions, Natalie had her mother coaching her from the sidelines in the most demented ways possible. To ensure that a crying scene went smoothly, Maria once presented a struggling butterfly to her daughter and then proceeded to rip off its wings in front of her. Maria would also regale Natalie with horrifying stories about animal cruelty, or talk about their beloved family dog who died. Poor Natalie was just a puppet. Just like her mother, Natalie had a fear of water. I've always been terrified, still am, of water, dark water, seawater, or river water. On the set of The Green Promise, 9-year-old Natalie almost drowned when a scene went horribly wrong. She was told to run across a bridge that was set to collapse after she made it to safety. The bridge gave way while she was still on it, sending her into the watery depths and causing her to break her wrist. She had no idea that this early trauma strangely foreshadowed her final moments. Natalie became known as a child star and was most famous for her role in the Christmas classic Miracle on 34th Street. As she grew into a beautiful young woman, new dangers arose. At 16, she auditioned for Rebel Without a Cause and caught the eye of 42-year-old director Nicholas Ray. Underage Natalie found herself a victim of an inappropriate liaison, and yet she still really wanted the part of Judy in the movie. Unfortunately, entertaining Nicholas Ray didn't necessarily mean she'd landed the role. Other actresses were up for the part, including Jane Mansfield and Debbie Reynolds. Wood found herself in casting limbo, that is, until one reckless night changed everything. One fateful evening, she and Dennis Hopper embarked on a drunken night out that ended in a car crash and landed Wood in the hospital. When Nicholas Ray arrived at her bedside, he heard the doctor call her a goddamn juvenile delinquent. She literally was a rebel without a cause. This may have been what convinced Nicholas Ray to finally give her the part she coveted. Turns out, Wood truly was the best fit for the role. In fact, her performance was so impressive, she walked away with an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress. But it also signaled a turning point. For Wood, this was the first script that had really spoken to her, a project she genuinely wanted to be a part of. On the surface, 16-year-old Wood seemed like she had it made, but behind closed doors, she lived a different life. It was only years later that one of her most haunting chapters came to light. Reportedly, a very renowned and married Hollywood star had brutally and intimately assaulted her when she was just 16. Natalie left the encounter injured and too terrified to ask for help. She never went to the authorities, but instead confided in some of her closest friends. In 2021, her sister Lana wrote a book, Little Sister, in which she alleges the perpetrator was Kirk Douglas. When she was 18, Wood had a huge celebrity crush on Elvis Presley. Dazzled by his music and good looks, she desperately wanted to meet him. Wood's old co-star and friend, Dennis Hopper, introduced them, and when the pair set eyes on each other, sparks flew. On one of their first dates, Elvis flexed his star power by renting out an entire theater. Gestures like these charmed Wood, and soon the couple were ready to take their relationship to the next level. Elvis wanted to take her home to meet his family, but this was a huge mistake. Natalie eagerly followed her famous boyfriend back to Memphis to meet his mother, Gladys, but upon arrival, her excitement turned to horror. Elvis was a mama's boy through and through, and he shared a rather intimate bond with his mother, perhaps too intimate. On one unsettling occasion, Gladys even asked Elvis to come and sit on Mama's lap. Wood cringed in the face of Elvis's gooey affection for his mother. She didn't care for Gladys at all, and unsurprisingly, the resentment went both ways. Only days after arriving, Wood lied to the Presleys about having a family emergency and left as fast as she could. But although it seemed that Natalie was unlucky in love, her greatest romance was just around the corner. When she was only 10 years old, the young actress saw 18-year-old Robert Wagner swaggering down the hall of 20th Century Fox Studios. Years later, the pair were set up by the studio, who believed that such a tryst could churn up some much-needed publicity for the up-and-coming actress. From there on, Wood surrendered to her fairy tale romance with Wagner. The two actors seemed like a match made in heaven, and by the next year, they were engaged. Because Warner Brothers dictated her entire career, Wood became increasingly unhappy with her roles. In an effort to stand her ground, she did something that almost ruined everything. She refused to act in both The Miracle and A Summer Place. It was a bold move, but Warner Brothers didn't take kindly to this act of rebellion and suspended her for 18 months. Her stubbornness wasn't in vain, and after feuding with studio head Jack Warner, she eventually earned the right to hand-pick one film per year. Even so, her career was in danger. When Wood returned to work, she found her career caught in a downward spiral. Fortunately, she managed to land a role that brought her back into the limelight, 1961's Splendor in the Grass. Her experience working on the film, directed by one of her favorite filmmakers, Elia Kazan, allowed her to dig deep into herself and push her acting to the limit. As Natalie's career began to skyrocket, her success far outweighed that of her husband. By the time she played her most famous role of Maria in 1961's West Side Story, Wood had become a household name. After Wood and Wagner ended their relationship in 1962, it wasn't long before she had a brand new beau on her arm. Warren Beatty, her co-star in Splendor in the Grass. Naturally, the press came to the assumption that Natalie had cheated on her husband. But years later, her sister Lana claimed it was Wagner who was at the center of the marriage's collapse. Allegedly, Wood had found him in a very compromising position, in bed with another man. Her time with Warren Beatty was tumultuous, and they were at each other's throats all the time. After only 2 years, they called it quits, but the fallout left Natalie in shambles. Her mental health began spiraling, and soon, even acting became draining. Her experience on the set of The Great Race left her feeling depleted, and after making it through the project, she attempted to take her own life. Thankfully, after swallowing too many sleeping pills, she changed her mind and sought help before it was too late. For exclusive perks like early access to new videos, priority replies to your comments, and to have your say on future content, consider becoming a Factor Nate member. On top of that, your support helps keep the channel going. Click the link in the description for more details. Natalie Wood reached peak stardom in the mid-60s. In fact, she was one of the most sought-after leading ladies, sharing the room with other greats like Elizabeth Taylor and Audrey Hepburn. However, beneath the mask of fame, she was having difficulty controlling her emotions. She needed therapy to work through her inner demons, but even that didn't cut it. She realized she needed to make a drastic lifestyle change. She decided to pay Warner Brothers $170,000 to escape her contract, and before long, Natalie Wood had purged her acting life. She fired her agents, publicists, accountant, managers, and attorney. By the end of the decade, the troubled actress would find herself married once again, but before she walked down the aisle, she entertained romances with a number of famous suitors, including Michael Caine and David Nevin. Then, in 1969, she found a seemingly perfect match. Her marriage to film producer Richard Gregson was fruitful, but incredibly short-lived. A year after tying the knot, the couple welcomed their first child, Natasha. For a brief time, they were happy, until Gregson dealt Natalie a betrayal. She caught her husband having a sordid conversation with his secretary, and after that, the trust was gone. But Natalie had no intention of being alone. Only months after her divorce, she fell into the arms of another man, and his identity shocked everyone. In 1972, she returned to her first husband, Robert Wagner. The turnaround was fast, but it seemed that the pair still shared a deep connection. They rekindled their romance after Wood visited him in Palm Springs. 2 years later, the reunited couple welcomed a daughter named Courtney. Wood seemed to have bounced back from a very dark place. She found therapy, made peace with her husband, and had a loving family to raise. She dedicated almost all her time to her children and worked on a few projects here and there. Everything seemed to fall into place for her, but little did she know, her time in the sun would be tragically cut short. In 1981, 43-year-old Natalie boarded her husband's yacht, Splendor, completely oblivious to what lay ahead. The fateful evening of November 28th began innocently enough. Wood and Wagner were hosting her co-star and friend, Christopher Walken. But what started as a relaxing hangout ended in infamy. The next morning, everyone on the Splendor awoke to find that Wood was missing. Actress Natalie Wood was found dead today. Her body was discovered fully clothed in waters off Santa Catalina Island. The beloved actress, who was terrified of water, had tragically drowned. Although the events leading up to her disappearance have remained mysterious for decades, there are some clues as to what may have happened. Wagner claimed that when he fell asleep, his wife wasn't with him. But there's some evidence that casts suspicion upon Wagner himself. For one, his story changed. When the yacht's captain, Dennis Devern, the only other person on the boat aside from the 3 actors, said that he'd heard the couple fighting earlier in the evening, Wagner completely denied it. But when he published his memoir, he confessed that he had indeed fought with his wife before her disappearance. Already his unreliable retelling shrouded the truth. But that wasn't all. Wood's autopsy report raised even more questions. There was evidence of injuries, bruises on her body, as well as a scrape across her cheek. And yet the coroner couldn't pinpoint how she actually sustained these injuries. Instead, he hypothesized that a mixture of alcohol and painkillers exacerbated her intoxication. While trying to board the dinghy, the unsteady actress could have accidentally fallen. But even this hypothesis seemed weak. Wood's sister Lana didn't believe for a second that her sister would have left the yacht by herself. After all, she had a terrible phobia of water. But perhaps the most chilling piece of evidence came from some people aboard another boat. At the time that Natalie Wood vanished, witnesses remember hearing a woman crying out for help. All this conflicting evidence pointed to something sinister, and yet too many pieces of the puzzle were missing. It was only years later that Splendor's captain came forward with some horrifying new information. In 2011, Natalie Wood's case reopened after Dennis Devern confessed to lying to authorities about the night of her death. Along with revealing the telltale argument between Wood and Wagner, he also claimed that the actress had been outwardly flirting with her guest, Christopher Walken. This enraged Wagner so much so that when Natalie couldn't be found on board, he did something unspeakable. According to Devern, Wagner allegedly told the captain not to search for her in the water and not to call for help. Suddenly, the grieving widower was cast as the murderous villain. As recently as 2018, Robert Wagner became a person of interest in the investigation of Natalie Wood's death. He was undoubtedly the last person to see her alive, and officials say that there is a distinct possibility that the actress was beaten before drowning in her watery grave. Wagner denies all accusations. If you enjoyed this Factinate video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories. If you want to see and who we cover next, join our membership program through the link in the description for exclusive perks. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.